Good afternoon. I call you Mayor Broomfield. I call you Coach Broomfield. I've been knowing you seems like all my life. Uh, so this is my first interview of 2023. I thank you for the opportunity for affording me the ability to conduct this with you. And first off, can you state your name and your birth date for me?
My name is Billy Broomfield. My birthday is 1/13/1945.
1945. Where were you born at, sir?
I was born in North Point, Mississippi.
Okay. So, one of the first things I like to find out is what was childhood like? As early as you can remember, what was going on in Moss Point in your early childhood?
My childhood was very rewarding, and I have very vivid memories of my childhood because when I was growing up, the cliche about it took a village to raise a child was very, very true. No matter where I or my classmates or siblings went in the community, there was somebody always there to either guide us in the right direction or tell our parents when we've done something that they know that they didn't approve of. And so at some times we even got disciplined by the neighbors. And when you got home, the word beat you home and you got another one, okay? And the worst thing you could perhaps do was once your mom tell you that Miss Sally down the street said you did such and such a thing, you don't want to say, no, I didn't. Because now you call Miss Sally a lie, and my parents didn't play that. We were taught respect in my household that began with ourselves and elderly people. And we were given discipline whether we thought we needed it or not. I perhaps got more whippings than anybody I know. Because my mother used to save them for me. She used to tell me, boy, I'm going to get you. And after about 3 of those, I decided she wasn't going to remember. So I kept doing what I was doing. And then when her plate got full, she said, okay, it's time to collect. You remember when I told you? And I thought she had forgotten, but she didn't. And she started with that, and she would not stop until whatever the last mischievous thing I did. Right. And there were times when I would run and jump into bed with my dad, but if he didn't move, he got whipped too. She didn't let anything stop her from disciplining me. And I shudder to think where I would be had that not occurred in my life, because a lot of my classmates and playmates that I grew up with, either I saw them die needlessly or go to prison for quite some time. And so I was very grateful for what occurred in my younger days. And also, we were made to go to Sunday school and church. That was not debatable in my home. You were going. And if you didn't go there on Sunday evening, you couldn't go anywhere else. Because if you didn't feel like going to church, you're certainly not going to feel like going out to play. So, but it was all about teaching you about decision making. My parents used to always tell me that there are consequences for your actions, and you need to think about those consequences before you commit the action. And if you're not willing to accept those consequences, then don't commit those actions. And so that stuck with me. I was just grateful for being able to survive during that era, because I think it was a great era. Everybody looked out for everybody. We didn't have to lock our doors. Our parents didn't have to worry about getting jacked at the parking lot at the grocery stores. Those things didn't exist. Yeah, we had a few minor problems, but nothing like I see going on today. So my childhood, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Okay, so let me dig a little deeper into your childhood. Now you say you was born in 1945, and you so both parents in the home, correct?
Yes,
So did you have siblings?
I do, but all of them are gone now except me. I was the youngest
You was the youngest of how many?
of five.
Of five.
Yeah,
Okay, what was the breakdown? Like
it was two girls. I'm sorry, it was more than five. It was let's see, Alvin, Willie. It was seven.
seven.
Yeah,
Seven
yeah,
in the house.
yeah. So
Okay. And what was the breakdown?
the breakdown was uh, two girls and four boys, five boys.
Five boys, and
Yeah,
you was the youngest of
I
all.
was the youngest.
Now, how big was the house?
It wasn't a very big house. We had two bedrooms, I believe, I recall,
Two
and
bedrooms.
a kitchen and a living room, yeah, and a bathroom.
Okay, so
Yeah.
bathroom was inside the house.
Yeah, it was. Fortunately, when we came along, the bathroom facilities were being put inside the homes.
Okay.
I didn't experience that part where you had to go to the outhouse
Right, right.
until I went to the country where my father was from.
Okay, so in the country where your father was from, were your grandparents living?
No, just my father's sister.
Okay,
I never knew my grandparents or my great grandparents.
okay, okay. Um, Now, where was your father from?
He was from Osaka.
Ooh, where is that?
That's in Pike County, up by Macomb
Okay.
and Magnolia.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
Say it again.
Osaka, Mississippi.
Never heard of that.
Well,
That's
it's
new.
right outside of Macomb, Magnolia. You've heard of those, right?
Right.
It's in that area,
Okay.
but it's geographically it's a large place, but population wise, it wasn't that big. It was perhaps about 1,500 people, maybe.
Okay. I want to take two. I want to take two paths on this. Now, by you mentioning that in 1945 you were born, in 1955 Emmett Till was killed,
Hmm.
and I don't remember exactly. Was it Money, Mississippi? I think Money, Mississippi is where he was killed. To your recollection, did any of the adults back in that day, like, tell you that you had to be careful based on those types of stories existing?
You know, for whatever reason, the Gulf Coast, this area, we were a little different
Mm-hmm.
than those folk north of Hattiesburg.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we were just taught to be respectful of each other, to say yes ma'am and no ma'am. We were taught to don't bother things that don't belong to you. Don't go to this place, don't go to that place, because we were not accepted in those places at the time. But basically, we didn't have that problem because, I didn't go to those places until I became an adult, and then I got rambunctious, and I got to the point where I wanted to try to understand why I can't go there. Why somebody else can go and I can't go.
And that's the reason I asked, and that's why I said it was two different paths I wanted to go with that, because so you said that the coast was different.
Sure, I recall the Klan, they never could get a hope down here because we weren't fearful of the Klan like they were north of Hattiesburg. I recall once the Klan had a rally out here on Jefferson by the National Guard building where that vacant lot is.
Over there where they had a fair.
Yeah. No, on Jefferson now.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
I know the National Guard.
yeah, where the National Guard building is.
Okay.
There's a big lot there.
Okay.
and they were having a rally out there for the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talked my brother-in-law into, let's go see what's going on. And we both got in his vehicle. He had a low Camaro at the time, and we drove out to the area. And they had a guy directing people into the lot that was supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And when the guy bent down and saw who we were, he said, "No, you got to move on. You can't go."
Right.
But we tried,
Right.
and it just didn't happen. But I do recall the drive-in theater right down that used to be down by Jerry Lee's.
Mm-hmm.
You recall that? That was a drive-in theater down there.
Jerry Lee's in
Pascagoula.
Pascagoula?
Yeah, if you go past all the way past Jerry Lee's,
Mm-hmm.
there's a vacant property back there,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the drive-in theater used to be.
Mm-hmm.
No blacks had ever gone to that
Mm-hmm.
theater, and so I was stationed in the military at the time. I was stationed at Fort Rucker, Alabama, so I would come home about every 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And this weekend I came home. I brought a couple of my drill sergeant buddies with me,
Mm-hmm.
and we talked to my wife and my brothers and my brother-in-law, and we said we're going to go down to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
So we called them and asked them what was planned, and they told us, and they said, "Okay, we'll be there in a moment."
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, we loaded up about 5 cars of us,
Mm-hmm.
and we drove down. They let us in. We paid for it. We got our speaker and put it in our window so we could hear what we were seeing on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But we never went to the concession stand, and the sheriff, needless to say, was there.
Mm-hmm.
So was the Pascagoula PD, but there was no need because we didn't do anything illegal. We just wanted to be able to go to that movie just like everybody else was going to that movie. So we did, and about a year later they closed it down.
Mm. Okay.
So basically we integrated that movie.
And so, do you think the closing down was as a result of the integration?
I think so.
That's always intrigued me, those types of stories, because my people are from like Enterprise, Mississippi, in Clark County.
Okay.
And a few years back, they discovered a pool. The pool had been covered up, but it had been covered up because of integration. Because once they started saying, "Hey, you gotta let the blacks start coming to this pool as well," the white community was like, "You know what? We'd rather cover the pool up and nobody swim."
Well, that story is applicable to Moss Point. Moss Point had a pool, a public pool, downtown. And as soon as they decided, as soon as they figured out we were going to be participating in that process and using that pool, they filled that in.
Where was the pool at?
The pool was, you know where the old police station used to be?
In the old library?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The pool was west of that area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not as far back as the recreation center, but just before you get there, the pool was in that area,
And they filled it in.
and they filled it in.
So, the climate was different than north of Hattiesburg, but we still had some racial.
Oh, sure. You know, racism is still alive and well today. Racism has been prevalent for a long time, and I probably won't ever see a time where racism doesn't exist in my lifetime. I would hope, and I have hoped, but I don't believe it's ever going to happen because nobody is born prejudiced. Okay, people are taught prejudice, and it matriculates down from generation to generation. But I would hope at some point somebody would wake up and realize that we're all God's children. We were all created by one creator, and nobody is better than anybody else. We achieve things differently. We reach different levels of successes, but that doesn't make us better than those people who have not. And so I would like to, in my lifetime, see where everybody would respect everybody as an individual and and the content, as Martin used to say, the contents of their character, okay? Not the color of their skin, but the work that used to go toward that seems to me have slackened up some. We don't have people fighting the fight anymore to make sure that injustices are being addressed throughout this country. So, yeah, we didn't have what they had. We didn't have the hangings and the burnings that they had north of Hattiesburg, but we had prejudices that we had to deal with as well, just on a different level.
Okay, so the swimming pool left. We covered that up. The movie theater, we closed that down. I've always wondered.
Well, one of them caught a fire.
One of the pools?
The movie theater.
Movie theater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wondered because in New Orleans you had, and other cities, you had what they call Great White Flight. And it seems like that's something that occurred in Moss Point as well. That a lot of the white population moved out due to the moving in of the minority.
Well, they did, but it really started in the 70s during the integration. Okay, when they integrated the schools, whites started to move north to the county area for various reasons. Some would say that they were moving because the houses that they were in were not economically feasible to maintain anymore because their children were grown and gone. Some moved because they claimed that the taxes were a problem in the municipality. Some just moved because they didn't want to be in a predominantly black area. And that's about the bottom line. They just decided they didn't want to be here, and I don't know how you stop that.
So, based on that, I don't understand how we would stop it either. However, I know that it causes an issue because the tax base is what is going to be responsible for providing the revenue for the school system. And with that flight, people moving out, then as a result, do you think that ties into Moss Point having like one of the oldest schools on the coast?
Moss Point got one of the oldest schools on the coast because it made a colossal mistake after Hurricane Katrina. As you well know, those other schools along the Gulf Coast that were devastated by Katrina, they got brand new schools. And the reason they got brand new schools is because when FEMA came in to look at the devastation, they saw the complete picture of the devastation. What Moss Point did was, and they attempted to do something good, but they didn't understand the unintended consequences of their actions. They went out and they cleaned up Magnolia so that they could get back into the classrooms. So when FEMA came, they didn't see a 50% damage because they had cleaned it up. And so by virtue of that, we didn't get the funds for the school district of Moss Point that the other school district got because they let things sit until the right people had an opportunity to see the destruction. and that's why we didn't get one. Uh, we finally, through the Magnolia High School Alumni Association, we put together a committee and we went to Washington and we fought to get Magnolia the way it is now. But there were people who wanted to build a new Magnolia, but they wanted to put a fence around it, which would have made it look like a prison. And so the judge said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to build this school, and you guys are going to go back and you're going to work out a plan, and that's my judgment. So that's how you got Magnolia. But they initially didn't want to do anything because they wanted a new high school. Okay. They wanted a new high school, but they didn't want it over here. They wanted it in the Escatawba area, or the East Central area. That's where they wanted it. Well, you know, we fought that too. Our children shouldn't have to be bused to an area where you already got a high school. Now, if you want to build a high school, do like those others have done, do a bond issue and let the people decide whether or not they want to shoulder the responsibility of spending money to build a new high school. Not saying that a new high school is not needed, because I believe it is. It's an old building. It's been patched and patched and patched, but somewhere down the line you've got to have the right leadership to develop the kind of plans that they can bring to the local government and the citizens to buy into to build a new school in that same location.
Okay, let me pause for just a second. All right, so let me backtrack a little bit. I want to go back to your childhood, back in this home that had 7 children and 2 parents. What was a daily routine for you, from what you can recollect?
Well, being the youngest, you know, whatever problems there were, it didn't affect me because I was protected by my mom and my other siblings. So all I remember was a lot of love and a lot of chaos sometimes, because somebody wanted this or they wanted that, and there was another person who wanted that as well, and so compromise was taught very early in my childhood. It didn't affect me.
Being a baby, did you have any chores?
Yeah, finally. Wow, when everybody else was gone,
Really?
it fell on me.
What was the age gap between you and your oldest sibling?
About 6 years.
About 6 years?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't too bad. So, but once everybody was gone, then some of the chores fell on you. School. What was your recollection of school? What was the first school that you attended?
The first school I attended was a kindergarten that was taught by a lady named Miss Liza Jackson, and it was on Elder Street. And that was the first school I attended, and I recall that during the time when I first started that school, I had a stuttering problem. I would stutter. And before I left that school, I was not stuttering, but she was able to teach you. She was able to work with you individually and give you extra attention if you needed it. As a matter of fact, when I left Miss Liza's kindergarten, instead of going to first grade, I went to second grade.
Papa?
Okay.
Papa?
Hey.
Hey.
Hey. So that was the first school that I went to. And the next school that I went to was Magnolia Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
And then my father got killed in 1958 at the paper mill.
Mm-hmm.
And so by that time we had moved to Pascagoula, and we were living in what was called Old Carver Village.
Mm-hmm.
You probably don't remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a village down there that had 7 different blocks in it,
Mm-hmm.
from the 100 block to the 700 block. And they had each block had about 6 or 7 rows of housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there until, like I said, until my father got killed, and then we moved back to Moss Point,
Mm-hmm.
and we bought this. This is my homestead right here.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Of course, we did some modifications, but this is where I lived when I went to Magnolia, right here.
Okay.
So I just walked down the street.
So, Old Carver Village. Now, they got the senior citizen over there in Pascagoula. That's where Carver Village used to be, the one I know.
Well, but that was one before the one you knew.
So there was one before that. 'Cause
Yeah.
that was right by the train tracks.
Well,
Between
yeah,
the train tracks and Highway 90.
sure.
Where was the old Carver?
It was in that same vicinity.
Okay.
It was just structured a little differently.
Okay.
Okay. As a matter of fact, in that area, they had grocery stores, they had drug stores on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
They had Dr. Reuben P. Morris's office on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
They had the dentist's office on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
They had restaurants, nightclubs,
Mm-hmm.
washerettes. They had a litany of things in the old village area.
Okay. Let me ask a question, piggybacking off of that. You mentioned a lot of businesses. Were any of those businesses black owned?
Sure.
I know
Sure.
you said Dr.
They all
Morris.
were.
They all were.
Except for the grocery store.
Except for the grocery store.
Yeah, they all were.
Okay. So black businesses were thriving.
Sure. Sure they were.
Now, do you think that in our present situation we have businesses thriving in the same way that they were back then?
No, we don't.
What would be your assessment of why?
Well, number one, you gotta want to go in business, and number two, you gotta have something to offer the area if you're going to survive in that business. And so, to me, if you're going to go in business, the first question you gotta ask yourself: does the people in this area need what I'm offering? And if you find that to be true, then how do I get it to them at a price which they can afford? Okay. And number three, if it's a mom and pop, which they usually were, then you've got to compete with the Wayne Lees and the Jerry Lees and the Piggly Wigglies, because you can't buy in that volume. Okay. So because you can't buy in that volume, what you purchase, you pay more for it than what those big chains were paying for theirs. Okay. To be honest with you, bedrooms don't bring in enough revenue to effectively operate a municipality. You must have revenue generators, businesses. Okay. And if you're going to have businesses, you got to have at least 2 things that the presidents and CEOs who look at moving to an area look for. One is your education system. They're not going to move to an area where their family and their employees are going to go to an inferior school. Crime. They're not going to move to an area where those same employees and family members are going to be plagued with crime. And so you have to have those 2 avenues covered, and then people will look at perhaps coming to your area. Moss Point is a beautiful city. Moss Point has a lot of potential. Moss Point has the potential to be a model city for the rest of the state, simply because we have water, air, rail, and interstate all in close proximity of one another. You don't have to drive 5 or 10 miles to get from one to the other, okay? And so all Moss Point has to do is find them a qualified economic development person who knows how to sell the city of Moss Point to those who can help financially grow the city and take the burden off homeowners, and it'll happen. I recall when I first got elected as mayor, I had a 9-point plan, and we accomplished 8 out of the 9. And the 9th one that I wanted to accomplish was a grocery store. Okay, but when I started to inquire with grocery chains, I was told that our area didn't warrant another grocery store because we had a Piggly Wiggly right here, we had Wayne Lee's over there, and we had Walmart out here. And so it didn't sit well with me because I knew we also had a grocery store out here in the mall right off of 63 many years ago, and it worked well. But I don't know the reason that they closed and left. But we just couldn't get I couldn't get a grocery store here. But economically, you got to have some businesses here. I had talked to some people who were from Africa who was going to put in a light grade oil processing plant on the property across the street from the airport. Okay, they were going to put up their own training facility. They were going to put up their own plant. They were using their own funds. Okay, but you know, after my tenure, the young man who followed me didn't do a transition. He didn't talk to anybody. He knew everything, and so he didn't know that we had talked to these people, and we had talked to some other people who wanted to come in and put a business here. We've had about 3 or 4 different groups that wanted to come in under our administration, because what we had to do, we were sort of like President Barack Obama. We inherited a difficult situation. We didn't have any funds when we took office. We were paying the highest millage in Moss Point than any city in the state of Mississippi. Our water was brown and smelly and you wouldn't drink it. The Public Service Commission was threatening to shut the city down because of the gas leaks all over the city. Fortunately, I served in the legislature with the then Public Service Commission, and I asked him to give us an opportunity to fix the problem. And we did. We had to go in and fix the infrastructure, which had not been fixed in about 30 years. We found that a lot of the issues that were there was the pipes that were underground were outdated. They didn't make those anymore, and a lot of them were collapsed. Some of them were the wrong size. But through grant money, we were able to get what we need and fix that part of it, and so we did. As far as the water quality was concerned, the reverse osmosis system that they put out here was not being run properly. They didn't have the people who either possessed the qualifications or exhibited the qualifications to maintain the correct chlorinated process to make sure that the water was what it should be. So we finally were able to find the right people to make that happen, to the point where we were anticipating selling water to other municipalities. Rose Drive had been flooding for over 30 years. we went out and we put 13 drains that you and I could walk through, because what we found was the way that property was made out there, it sits on a hill and it slopes to the road. So when it rains, the water goes from your property down to the street. They only had 4 drains. 2 of them were collapsed and the other 2 were the wrong size. And in addition to that problem, they were trying to run the water south to the Gulf. That would have been fine, except when they did the flyover for Chevron, they raised the property out there. Water does not run uphill. So we found a way to reroute the water from Rose Drive area out to the Escatawba River by purchasing right-of-ways, and didn't affect anybody's property. But those are the things that we inherited, but we had a good administration. We had a good group of people working for us, and we were able to reward those people by finding funds to give them a raise that they hadn't had in over 10 years, some of them. And we factored in a 1% every year. But you know, when you accept a position as a mayor, there's a lot of work involved. You just don't go to the office and say I'm the mayor and sit down and think things are going to happen by osmosis. It isn't. Fortunately for me, I served 20 years and like 22 years in the House of Representatives, and also in that serving, I was a member of the Southern Legislators Conference, which is made up of 15 southern states. And I ended up being the first black president for that organization. And I met a lot of CEOs and presidents who, after I was elected, called and said, how can we help? And that's what you have to have. Partnerships work. If you don't have the right partnership, or if you don't have partnerships at all in your plan, it's difficult to accomplish your mission.
Okay, so let me go back and touch on, we left off with middle school, I want to say.
With what?
Middle school.
Okay.
In your schooling. Now, your tenure in the public education system, was it all segregated?
Yes.
So after middle school, Magnolia Middle School, you went to?
We didn't have a middle school.
Okay, so we went
from elementary to high school.
Elementary covered what grades?
Elementary covered up to, I believe it was the 6th grade.
6th grade.
Yeah.
So from the 7th.
It might have been 7.
Okay.
It might have been 7.
And then so possibly from the 8th through 12th.
Yeah.
That was high school.
Yeah.
And where was Magnolia High School located at?
Where it is now.
Same place it is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like?
That was beautiful. We had some excellent teachers and principals, and each one was responsible for one. We were taught that there's nothing that we can't accomplish if we put our minds to it. We were taught out of substandard books and equipment that was passed down from Moss Point High School to us at Magnolia, but our teachers didn't let that stop them. They made sure that we were prepared to compete with any other children anywhere else in this United States. And we were. If you go back and look at the history of the graduates of Magnolia High School, some of them are lawyers, some of them are doctors, some of them are preachers, some of them are teachers. They were all professionals. And so that era of my schooling at the high school was very memorable and rewarding, because I know, for instance, the teachers would go back to school during the summer to make sure that they were getting the most updated processes to teach whatever that subject area may have been. and they would come back and they would share that with us. And we had homework. You had to you had assignments that you had to do. You had to come home and you had to get your lesson. You bring those assignments back. And then I guess the real good part about it is they went to church with my mother. They went to the same beauty parlor as my mother. They went to the barbershop where my dad went. You know, they intermingle with the parents at some point. And so the parents always had a report. You know, how's my child doing? What's he doing? What's she doing? And they would tell us because at that same time they had something called a PTA, Parent Teacher Association. And that required teachers to be present after hours to periodically to talk to the parents about the children and give them an update. At some point after integration, they changed it to PTO, Parent Teacher Organization. Teachers don't have to go unless they want to now. And I think that was a colossal mistake. Because most parents work, they can't get off of their jobs, they want to go see about their children, but they also got to put food and clothes on their back and keep a roof over their head. And so if you miss too much time from a job, you know what that means. So I just think that they made a mistake when they changed it from PTA to PTO.
Let me ask you this question. So the school wasn't integrated, and you all were going to Magnolia. Did you play any sports?
Sure, football, baseball, and basketball.
Did you get an opportunity to mix with the white? Because at the same time that you all were going to school,
sure,
white kids was going to their school as well.
Sure.
Did you all ever mix?
No.
No mix.
No.
So when you played sports, you played.
I played football, baseball, and basketball.
So who did Magnolia play against?
Magnolia played people like Gulfport, Biloxi, Picayune, Hattiesburg, Mobile.
So we would be playing the other black schools like
that's
Nichols,
right. That's it.
Carver.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, it was a rivalry always between Moss Point and Carver. And our principals, I recall, had a friendly wager going that if we had to go down to Pascagoula to play them, whoever lost the game would have to walk back home or shave their hair. It was something that was very friendly but competitive. That I recall that we were always a rivalry, always.
Okay. Now, I've heard did you have a gym to play basketball in?
We did.
Okay. And so you had all the accommodations at the black school that the white school had.
No, we didn't. We had a gym.
Had a gym.
But we didn't have the facilities that they had. We didn't have lockers. We didn't have adequate showers. We didn't have weight room. We didn't have none of that good stuff that the whites had over there. We just had a gym with bleachers, and we also used that on Friday for chapel, where all of the classes would assemble and the principal would address the student body and the faculty. So it was a multi-purpose building, although we called it a gym, and it had goals. Excuse me.
Any teachers that you remember fondly from your time at Magnolia?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just got finished talking to one yesterday, Miss Inez Green.
Okay.
We talk frequently. She's 104.
Right.
But she's sharp. She still got a sharp mind.
I actually had the opportunity to interview her last year.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
But you know, what I found out from conversing with her was that they didn't make any money back during the time when she was doing what she was doing. I didn't realize that. They probably brought home about $60 a month. that was just mind blowing to me
Mm-hmm.
that they got paid that kind of money.
Mm-hmm.
But she I remember her, and I remember Mr. Banks, who's deceased now,
Uh-huh.
but he was an algebra teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and he used to always encourage me to go to law school.
Mm-hmm.
I never did follow his advice, but I regret it.
Right, right.
But our teachers took the position back then that if they got 50 students and 49 get it and one don't, that they failed to teach.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they taught school.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to make sure that you got what you came for,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, you know, you got that 10% that you're not gonna reach no matter what you do.
Right, right.
But for the most part, they didn't let that stop them. They did their job. And what I liked about them, as opposed to what I see at schools in all areas now, when you walked on our campuses, you could tell the difference between the students and the teachers. They dressed appropriately, they dressed professionally. The men had on shirts and ties or suits, and the ladies had on business suits.
Mm-hmm.
And so you knew who the teachers were.
Mm-hmm.
You walk on a campus now, you don't know who's who. I just noticed that vast difference, and it made a difference in the student body,
Mm-hmm.
because we looked up to those teachers.
Mm-hmm.
We respected them because they respected themselves, and we had admiration, and most of us wanted to be like them.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. One more time. All right, so we left off talking about high school and the teachers. Now, and then we graduated high school. Now, I
Yes.
know you said earlier that you came home from the military. So, was that what occurred after high school? Did
No.
you go?
No,
Okay.
I went to college. I went to Prentice Institute.
Okay.
That's in Prentice, Mississippi. It was a junior college.
Okay.
Uh,
Did you
and
go play sports?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
Which one?
Football,
What position did you play in football?
offensive, defensive end.
Okay. Oh, so you was good because they pulled you up there, right?
I guess. I held my own.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And then back during that era, if you graduated from junior college, you were supposed to sign a letter of intent that you were going to a 4-year institution, a university or college.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy that I graduated from junior college. I was out here having a good time, and I forgot to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a congratulatory letter from Uncle Sam saying, you've been recommended by your community. So I got drafted, in other words.
Okay.
I served 6 years in the military.
Okay. Did you serve during any conflict?
I was in Vietnam in 68 and 69 during the Tet offenses.
Okay, you was at the height of it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I came back from Vietnam, and I was at Fort Rucker, which is a flight training school.
Mm-hmm.
And they found themselves crowded at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where they do basic training.
Mm-hmm.
And they set up a basic training area in the old POW barracks at Fort Rucker, and they screened a lot of our records and chose us as drill sergeants. So I was one of those that got chosen as a drill sergeant at Fort Rucker. So
Okay.
I enjoyed that as well. I enjoyed meeting a lot of young men, and I to the point where I think this country made another mistake by doing away with the draft,
Mm-hmm.
because everybody's not going to college or university.
Mm-hmm.
And I recall when I was a drill sergeant, some of those young men found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time, on the wrong side of the law, and the judge gave them an ultimatum: you either go to prison or you go to the military. So they came to the military, and fortunately 9 out of 10 we were able to turn around. They just needed some guidance in their lives, and they needed somebody to show them how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to do that. And I think being in the military at least 2 years gives a person that opportunity.
Well, we definitely thank you for your service. Uh, but there was something mentioned in there I don't want to gloss over because when we was leaving junior college, we neglected to do something because you was talking about fun. So I want to touch on fun. When you were in high school and junior college, what was fun? What were the fun things that you all were doing back then? Were there clubs to go to? Specifically in Moss Point, what was the entertainment like in Moss Point?
When I was in high school, and again, I told you I played football and baseball and basketball, and those coaches for those different events were very strict. You had a curfew, and you needed to be in when you're supposed to because this is a small town, and there are no secrets about what goes on in a small town, and so if you go somewhere, you weren't going to be there very long. But there were places to go. We used to have a teenage center out on Jackson Street. It's where the kickoff club is sitting now. It used to be a teenage center that was run by the bigs at that time, and so that's where we used to hang out.
Kickoff club is across from that little apartment complex. Or
Yeah.
something? Okay.
Yeah, but before they put the kickoff club there, that was a teenage center there.
Okay.
Yeah. We would go there on the weekends, and we would dance. They'd have dances, and we'd hang out and drink soda and eat crackers and cookies or whatever it was. We just had a good time.
And we're still talking about segregated.
Oh, absolutely.
Aside from that, were there any other places around town that you can recall?
Yeah, we had a recreation center over on Bowen Street. I'm sorry, not Bowen Street, on Monarch Street. That was run by Mr. and Mrs. Ward, and it was sponsored through the city of Moss Point. But it was a building there, and they had ping pong, pool, the usual things, and then the basketball court outside. And so when we weren't at the teenage center, we were over there at the community center.
Now I've heard that Moss Point did have some of the children's circuit entertainers come through here.
Yeah, at the Elks Club, they used to come out there.
Where's the Elks Club?
Huh?
Elks Club is.
Yeah, the Elks Club is on McPhilia Road.
Okay, so the Elks Club on McPhilia. Do you remember any particular celebrities that came through?
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, when I was in high school, I also had a band. I used to play music. I was the lead singer. But at one point, at the kickoff club, we backed up a guy called Major Lance. He was a professional entertainer, and he was on his way through, and his band was somewhere else. And so we had to play for him. Johnny Taylor, Milton, most of the older guys, blues singers, at one point or another they were out there. And out there they were at the VFW in Pascagoula. James Brown frequented that. And Sam Cooke, I remember him being out there.
So Sam Cooke, James Brown came to the VFW in Pascagoula.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of the blues singers, Little Bill, Johnny Taylor. They came to the VFW.
They had both. They had
Elks.
both. Yeah.
Elks.
Yeah.
Okay, so McPhilia, would there have been like a black entertainment area?
Sure. There was no whites going to the Elks Club. There was no white going to the VFW in Pascagoula because the VFW was in the old village. Okay. And it was just for us.
Okay. Then, after you did your service in the military, Did you come back and get a job?
I did. I came back from the military in 1970. And during the time when I come back from Vietnam, they had determined that a number of us who had been in war zones were coming back, and they couldn't make the adjustment, and they were getting themselves in trouble. So they said, if you go home and you got 12 months or less, we'll send you home and we'll tell you when to come back and clear out. Okay, and so that they did. I came home and I got a job at Ingles at the East Bank, working in submarine overhaul and planning area. And a couple of months later, they sent their letter to come clear out the military. I went back and cleared out, and I came back and I got my job back at Ingles. I worked there for 37 years.
Mm-hmm. What'd you do out there?
I was in planning area mostly, and then my last, when I got elected to the legislature, I got hired out in employment area. I worked out there until I retired.
Okay. And when did you meet your wife?
In elementary.
Elementary school.
Yeah.
And we got married when?
No. Listen, we courted for 7 years.
Okay.
Before we got married.
Okay.
And I think it was 66 when we got married. But we've been married 57 years.
Married in 66. We're married 57 years. And you 2 daughters?
2 daughters, 5 granddaughters, 10 great-grandchildren.
Okay. And it's interesting because I know you've always had a certain heart, because the first time I ever met you was when you was coaching me.
Okay.
When I was in elementary school at West Elementary.
Right.
So the other day when I was talking to you and realizing that you got 2 daughters, I was like, well, why was he out there giving up his time coaching? And what was the rationale behind that?
Well, I've always took the position that to whom much is given, much is required. And I wanted to make sure that I passed on what was given to me by teaching young men the correct way to participate in extracurricular activities and enjoy the game. I never made winning a priority. I never told you guys to go win. I told you to go have fun and play like you've been taught. And that's what I always told you. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you were on the team or not, but we had one team that was undefeated and unscored upon. And we went to St. Martin and beat a team that hadn't been beat in 9 years, but we beat them in overtime over there. But yeah, I just wanted to be a father to some of those young men that didn't have a father, because I know losing my father, my mother did the best she could, but it's nothing like having a man in your life. And I wanted to make sure that I tried to teach these young men how to be young men, how to respect themselves, how to learn how to participate, because you're not going to win all the time, and winning shouldn't be the foremost thing on your mind. Participating and having fun and enjoying yourself should be what you do. And if you're taught the proper techniques, which when I watch football now, I just cringe, man. These young men don't know how to tackle. A lot of them are getting concussions because of that. I told you guys, the Lord knew you were going to play football. That's why he gave you 2 arms. So when you get ready to tackle that guy, you grab him like your girlfriend and hold him tight. And that's the way he won't get away. Football used to be a game of inches. Now it's a game of yards. They grab a guy around the shoulder and he still run 10 yards. Okay? They're not teaching these young men how to tackle anymore. And I asked a college coach who came to Jackson with their team. Why is it they don't do that? We don't want to get anybody hurt, was his response. Well, if you can't stop a team from scoring, you can't win. So defense is paramount to any sport. A good offense is necessary, but a good defense is equally as necessary. So I just gave, man, because it was given to me. And so what am I going to do with it if I don't share it?
It's interesting you say that, because that's one of the things that I feel like is important for people to give the way that you did back in the day, because that served as an example for me. By the time I came up, I was like, because I remember wherever I would see you at, it was Coach Broomfield. Coach Broomfield. Even though that was way back in elementary school.
Right.
You still made such an impact on my life and an impression that I was always finally like, that was Coach Broomfield. So that's a testament to the way that you said you looked at it, because I didn't look at you as a negative. You was always a positive figure to me. They go Coach Broomfield. So when it came time, I was always one that was like, let me go out here and coach these kids as well, because I had seen examples of the Coach Broomfields, and I was like, this is what we're supposed to do. Right. I guess it kind of goes back into that, it takes a community that you were talking about earlier.
Well, the one thing I used to do with you guys, in addition to teaching you how to play ball, I also told you that you couldn't be a class clown and play on my team. And because I would always come to your classes, wherever they were, and ask your teacher, how are you doing? And that was, I recall on one occasion, we did find a guy that was a class clown. He wasn't doing his lesson. He just disrupting class. I didn't do anything. I told the team what happened, and they assembled and they dealt with the guy. But he ended up turning himself around and contributing in the classroom and on the football field. But you couldn't, if you couldn't get your lesson, you couldn't learn my plays. That was my philosophy. Okay, so to me, it's called extracurricular activities. If you can do that in the school, then you can do this over here. But if you can't do your lesson, if you can't get your assignments, you shouldn't be allowed. And I introduced a bill in the legislature that said on a 4.0 scale, you had to maintain a 2.0, which is a C, in order to participate in extracurricular activities or athletics. So, needless to say, I got a lot of pushback from that, from parents, from coaches, from superintendents, from principals. And I just couldn't fathom why these people couldn't see the logic in what I was trying to do. But some of the parents said that's the only reason that child go to school, so he can go to pro. And I tried to convey to them that less than 1% of children who participate in extracurricular activity, particularly athletics, goes to pro. Less than 1%. So what happens to your child if he breaks his leg in 3 places and he can't any longer play? He needs something to fall back on educationally. And that was my logic for doing that, but, you know.
So that's a great segue into your legislative time. Can you give us a little insight into that? How much minority representation was there in the legislature when you initially got there?
When I initially got there, that was quite a bit. You had a Mississippi Legislative Black Caucus, which is comprised at that time of about 23. And we were the conscience for the process. If we felt that there was some mean-spirited legislation being proposed, we would go to the Speaker of the House and we would address our concerns. If we served on the subcommittee where that legislation was being discussed, we would talk about the pros and cons. and how it impacts particularly our people. And so I really and truly enjoyed the privilege to be able to serve in the Mississippi House of Representatives for 22 years, having become, I was the chairman of ports, harbors, and airports for the state of Mississippi. I was the subcommittee chairman on education. I was the subcommittee chairman on appropriations. And so it was a very unique process. No matter how smart you are, how smart you think you are, you have to learn that process. I was blessed because a person like Charles Young, Aaron Henry, Robert Clark, they took me under their wings and they said, boy, we're going to show you the do's and don'ts up here. And that was very helpful to me because that transition would have taken much longer had I had to figure that out on my own. But I was very grateful that they decided to share with me the knowledge that they knew that I needed to survive in that process. It takes you a year to figure out where all the bathrooms are. Okay, but I really enjoyed being in the legislature. I had the opportunity to travel to various other states and countries with different legislative bodies. So it was very enjoyable for me.
Okay. Is there, I know you talked about the 2.0 legislative bill that you tried to push through. Is there, what's your proudest achievement from your time in the legislature?
Well, the first thing I was able to do in 1996, at the request of Ira Polk, who was the mayor of the city of Moss Point at the time, was to get a local and private bill passed to do a hotel tax, bed tax for the hotels out in the city of Moss Point for the purpose of economic development in the city. That was the first bill I got passed. Then the next bill I got passed was a bill naming the bridge over on 163, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Bridge. There were the bill that gave the teachers their pay raise under Ronnie Musgrove, who was the governor at the time, was my bill that they used because it was the only bill left alive with the code section that had that language in it. And so when you're doing legislation up there, you can't pass legislation unless you got the proper code section of the law that governs that subject matter. And there was no other bill alive, and so that bill has my name on it that was able to give teachers their first pay raise in the state of Mississippi. There are a number of other legislation that I co-authored with other members, but they were quite a few in number. I mean, a lot in number. So I don't recall what they are, but I was able to be very successful, I think, because the number one thing you have to do is you have to get your colleague to respect you. And once they respect you, they know when you go to the podium to tell them whatever you're going to tell them to try to convince them to support what you're doing, you're not lying to them. There's not somebody in the back of the bill that's going to eat their lunch as a result of what you just did. And so I never did that. I was always up front with my colleagues, and they always knew it. And so whatever I went to the podium to do, I always got their support.
Okay. Now, as it relates to your employment with the shipyard, how was that? Did you encounter any hindrances? Was promotion potential there?
Well, listen, when I went to the shipyard in 1970, it wasn't a lot of advancement opportunities for people who look like me. As a matter of fact, I think about my fifth or sixth year at Ingalls, the federal government stepped in and made them reach out and get temporary supervisors that had half hats, what they used to call them, because they had none. They had no supervisor, they had no no half hats. They had no managers. They had none of that. And through the years, I saw a lot of changes occur because of the federal government, because you're dealing with federal contracts. And the last thing that the company wanted is for the Navy to cut off the funding because of something crazy going on down here. And I do remember that my wife's daddy and some others held up a $51 million contract at Ingalls because of the inferior way that blacks were being treated during that time at the shipyard. I recall transferring 5 times in 5 years because every time I would request a pay raise, I was being told that you're doing a great job, but the budget won't allow it. That was that way of getting around it. So I said, okay, I'll find another budget that will. And so that's how I had to overcome some of the irregularities that I was confronted with. I ended up being a section manager over in-process storage, IPS, at the shipyard. I was able to give a number of people jobs that were seeking jobs, and I enjoyed it. If I had to do it again, I don't know, because what I hear about what's going on down there now, I wouldn't want to be there. But that's just hearsay, so I don't know if that's true or not. But I gave them 37 years, and I gave them 37 good years, and I don't look back, and I don't have the desire to go back. I'm going to live the rest of whatever time I have, enjoying my wife and my grands and great-grands.
Okay. All right.
You may or may not know that, and I don't know if you listen to WKRG, or WJZD, I'm sorry, Rip Daniels. But they were talking about a piece of legislation that was being proposed in Jackson this year that would keep you from filming a police officer unless you 15 feet away. And I don't know if you heard about that.
No, sir, I didn't.
But because of the outcry, that piece of legislation, I was talking to one of my past colleagues today, that piece of legislation is dead. But the processes that go on up there, you don't hear about them unless you listen to people like a black radio station like Rip Daniels, because number one, the people that own the media and the press are white Republicans. The people that's running the system up there now are white Republicans. So they're not going to tell you that the Republicans are doing something that's going to hurt you. They're not going to tell you that. And for instance, they passed a piece of legislation, and that piece of legislation is called critical race theory. You heard of that?
Yes, sir.
Well, they don't want your children to be taught history in school. Now, I think that's the most atrocious thing that I've ever heard. Why would you not want to teach history in school? I do believe that it isn't really designed, or it wasn't introduced to keep our children from learning their history. I think it was designed to keep their white children from finding out how long they've been lying to them about the contribution that we made to this country. Okay? But I think now that they're having a problem because they're going on the web and they're doing research and they're finding out, yeah, we invented this, we invented that. But that's not what you told us. Okay? So they're having to deal with that. But I don't hear enough pushback from the community about not teaching history in school. That bothers me. you need to know history. If you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. Uh, and like Rip say, any road will lead you there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just one of the things. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, if you ask most people who was the first black president, what you think they would say?
Obama.
And you know that's not true, right?
Enlightenment.
The first black president was a man called John Hanson. He was not only the first black president, but he was the first president of this country. We didn't have a president then. And I'm going to give you this information that shares the light on the fact that he was, in fact, the first black president. And if you look at a $2 bill, his picture's on a $2 bill. Okay?
Okay.
So, the other thing I want to talk to you about is black history.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find it strange that we only have 1 month to reflect on our history? And it's the shortest month of the year?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that strange?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why?
Why?
There's a guy named Carter G. Woodson, okay? He started Black History Week because he recognized that there was nothing in the history books about the contribution that we were making to this country. So he started Black History Week. Then it matriculated to Black History Month. He did that in February out of respect for two people who made significant contributions to the freeing of the slaves. Those two people are Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And it just so happened that their birth month is February. So that's why we celebrate Black History in February. Not because that's the shortest month in the year, but because those are the two people that were responsible for freeing of the blacks as slaves. And so that's Carter G. Woodson's story.
Okay. Interesting. So we've touched on a variety of topics, and what do you think is, or let's say, in the time that you've been alive, what did you think you would not see? What technology or anything like that has amazed you?
Well, computer technology has amazed me, and I think we arrived at computer technology because of the space program. Okay, but I never thought I would see a computer be able to do the things that I see them do today. And then you factor in the cell phones. I wonder what we did before we had cell phones. I remember I used to have a pager. That was about the only way somebody could reach out to me. But having a cell phone is just mind-boggling what you're able to do with cell phone now. You go on the web, you can do research, you can do a litany of things with cell phones that it's just unimaginable. I never thought coming up that I would be where we are technologically, but given the fact that the United States at one point was leading in scientists, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. We've sort of taken a back seat to some other countries here lately, but we are where we are because we allow people to utilize their God-given ability uh, to move us to the next level.
If there was one thing, wisdom, advice that you would want to share with the future generations, like your grandson came in here a few minutes ago, what advice, wisdom would you want to impart to their generation?
Well, not just him, but there are others. My great grands, they need to understand that we were not born grown. What I mean by that is we were once their size and age. And so through trial and error and a lot of love, some of it tough love, some of it not, we persevered. And so our role is to try as best we can to prevent them from making the same mistakes that perhaps we've seen others make or we may have made. That's our role. And for them to accept what we're saying and give it a shot. Don't tell us that, oh, that was in your day. That's old fashioned. Nothing is new under the sun. Whatever has happened before, whatever is happening now has happened before. It's just a different scenario, but it has happened. So what I would like to leave with young people is pay attention to your elderly people. Pay attention. Love one another. Don't have these idiosyncrasies where if your friend isn't mad at this guy because you're mad at them, then they're not your friend anymore. Don't take that attitude. Put God in your life, because when all else fails, God will bring you through. Prayer works. Prayer changes things. But you got to know the power of prayer, and the only way to know it is you got to read your Bible. You should read it every day. My granddaughter in there, she'll tell you, I stress that to them, and she does. She reads it. And every time you read the Bible, no matter how many times you read it, you're going to see something you didn't see the first time. That's how the Bible is. But the Bible is the best guide that one could have. If you do what the Bible recommends you do, we wouldn't have the kind of problems that we're having. Our jails wouldn't be as full as they are. Our young men wouldn't be as lost as they are. They don't understand how to respect the young women no more. That's our job, is to protect our women. Don't let anything happen to them, okay? Open the doors for them. If they carry something heavy, relieve them of it. God made you with the muscles. He made her with the beauty. So you protect her. We got to teach our young men that. I don't know if we're doing that anymore, but that's what I'm doing with my young men. Okay? I'm trying to teach them how to be a man.
Well, Coach Broomfield, I appreciate you affording me this opportunity today. And is there anything else that you want to say before we close this out?
No, I just want to say that I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some things that I hope will be helpful to you and maybe some others who will be viewing this. I always had a philosophy that nothing good comes easy. You have to work at everything you do. You got to put forth an effort. But you can achieve. You can achieve. There's nothing that you can't do. But you got to want it. And once you want it, you got to go after it. Nobody's going to give it to you. Okay? But most of all, get educated. Once you get that, they can take everything you got, but they can't take that. I came up being told that. Once you learn it, you got it. And so, whatever I learned, I got it and I passed it on. And I think that's what God wanted me to do. And I really, really am proud of you and the others that I touched their lives like you. Because you turned out to be an excellent young man. You turned out to be a good man, a man. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud to know that I had just a little bit to do with that. I used to tell my wife all the time that I used to get phone calls from my players' parents, not yours, threatening them through me. But I used to tell them, go out there and get you a 2x4 and get his attention. But when they're on that football field, they're mine. And I treat them like they're mine. But when they off that field, they belong to you. You got to figure out a way to make them do what you require them to do. Now, if you tell me that they're being disrespectful, then we're going to have a conversation, because you can't disrespect your parents and play on my team. But the bottom line is, I'm very grateful for the opportunity that God has given me, and I'm very proud of people like you and others that I see on a daily basis. They're doing good things with their life. Because I know it wasn't easy for you, just like it wasn't easy for me. The devil was out there with you, just like he was out there with me. You had sense enough to tell him to get back. And I'm proud of that.
Well, thank you, Coach. Touched a lot of lives, and I'm sure that sentiment is the same for all of the little ones that you helped to influence and inspire throughout the years.
Thank you.
And still doing.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
doing.
Everywhere I see them now, they still call me Coach. You're not the only one. They still call me Coach. Yeah.
That speaks volume. That speaks volume.
Okay.
Right.